Good morning, and it is currently chucking it down in sunny Milton Keynes. The weather has taken a turn for the damp, but I am back here with another Tank Wars style event. This is becoming a regular kind of rules pack that we use here at All Games Workshop. Essentially, this means that you switch the requirements in bolt action for rifle platoon and armored platoon, so you're starting with that armored platoon. And we play 1500 points with 12 order dice, which kind of does limit things, but as we're generally taking more tanks in Tank War, as the name implies, that does make a lot of sense. Now, I've come back with my Americans this time. Last Tank War event, you may remember, I actually won it with my Americans because I brought 5 M3 Lees. And I thought that was just too powerful, and no one can be trusted with all of that power for themselves, and so I've handed off most of them to some other players. I've kept 2 of them, and they will be appearing today. But that does mean that I've got a few slots for my M10 Wolverine, my veteran M3 Stuart, so that gets the stabilizer for the ignoring the movement penalty with its main gun. That's pretty cool. But I've also recently painted up a heavy machine gun Jeep for my Yanks. So there's that. I didn't quite have the opportunity to fit the heavy machine gun team, kind of the infantry heavy machine gun team that's made with a crashed broken Jeep that I made recently. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to actually use that today. But the heavy machine gun Jeep that I painted alongside it is as a fighting vehicle in the list today. Then I have a rifle platoon, and I'm using the armoured infantry section from the Armies of the United States, which is relatively new, and I haven't actually read through it properly. But essentially it means that one of your regular rifle squads can take a light mortar, or kind of a mortar infantry section, rather than a mortar team. And one other one can take a pair of light machine guns. That's a fairly normal thing. But that is what I've done. So I've got a pair of light machine guns in one squad to deal with infantry, and then I've got the light mortar for maybe dropping on some vehicles, maybe dropping on some enemy infantry, depends what comes up. But then I've also got a bazooka, a not large officer team because they're allowed more assistance than they used to these days, and a pair of the M3 half-tracks, including my foam board one, which I always wanted to get that to a game, and today is finally the day. But that is my list for today. I think that's everything. I may have forgotten something, but let's head inside. I'm going to set up some tables as I always do, and then let's get on with the games. So in my first game I have a Soviet opponent with 2 trucks filled with veterans and Panzerfausts, and as you would expect, some tanks as well, I guess. The mission is just to score wiped out units. The terrain on the left here is fairly open, although it is providing a lot of heavy cover along the way. In the middle there's a little bit more line of sight blocking buildings, and so that is where I put a lot of my forces to begin with. My plan was to punch up the middle, try to stick together, and then push one way or the other depending on how the battle went. Right from the outset, at the start, my Wolverine facing off about half of my opponent's vehicles by itself. It managed to smash a KV, and then first order die of the next turn took out one of the T-34s. Excellent start. I took the risk of targeting the other T-34 next and letting the JS2 go, because if I'd have shot the JS2 second, it might not have gotten through all that armour, and I would have been left with 2 vehicles running on this side. Whereas the risk I actually took was a little bit of an easier shot to take out the T-34, but it means the bigger of the 2 vehicles is still coming down on me. But it wasn't long before those veterans with all the Panzerfausts showed up and put an end to that lucky streak. They also immobilised the Stuart behind this building, which meant that that vehicle just spent the rest of the game doing entirely nothing. Oddly, my opponent had a similar struggle to me at this point, facing their anti-armour versus my tanks, and their anti-infantry versus my infantry. With nothing else to shoot at, their 4 squads and their officer mobbed my mortar team, which was kind of a waste. The right side of the board was a little more sensible, with my pair of Lees putting down a great volume of fire, bundling shots onto this pair of T-34s, and using their machine guns to harass trucks and infantry as
targets of opportunity arise. I also put the other half track with my machine gun squad up on this hill in the corner, which turned out to be a terrible idea as my opponent's infantry were the other side of the board, and this exposed position led to the half track being immobilized pretty much straight away. But the two Lees with their overlapped fields of fire kept pressure on these T-34s. They can fire 2 shots at me, and I can clear 2 pins per turn, but I can fire 4 shots at them, splitting it up, and they can only clear 2 of those pins, so I was slowly racking up pin after pin, and this is actually where the half-track's heavy machine gun came in handy, as it had nothing else to do. This led to one of those enemy tanks actually pinning out, which is fairly rare, especially in 3rd edition, but not before one of them took a sneaky shot down the length of the board, blowing up the other half-track with my bazooka team on board, who was trying to go after the JS2. Overall, the Lee's pairs and the Wolverine at the beginning were my only scoring points, and my opponent cleared up a lot of my infantry teams, unfortunately, and so I lost this particular game. My second game against another Soviet player, but not just any Soviet, my favourite opponent, who is a total madman. I have mentioned this person before, and every game we play turns into utter chaos. Absolute fantastic. Love it. We are playing table quarters, and I chose the near left quarter to start with, so I could have more heavy cover at the beginning of the game, but that's not going to be as important as you might think it would be. The bulk of my opponent's force deployed right in the middle, aiming to come down my right hand side, where I had also focused on a thrust through that same area. We both saw that as an easy open ground to push through. We both very quickly found that we were playing this mission in exactly the same way as each other. Drive really far forwards, stick your anti-tank gun right up the enemy's nose, and fire. This kept happening. My opponent knocked down this wall to drive their entire force out into the open to face me and blew up the half-track with the bazooka on board. This poor guy got blown out of his transport 2 games now and died both times, causing some hits and pins but not actually destroying any enemy vehicles. But this whole board was an utter mess. Almost all of these vehicles are destroyed here. There was a secondary scuffle on the far side of the board that I didn't take enough pictures of, and that includes my half-track and the officer reaching my opponent's table quarter, which would have scored loads of points, but the enemy KV and SU dealt with them quite handily, so no points for me there. I did manage to score a few points with my surviving infantry, so I did end up actually winning this game, the utter chaotic mess that it was. The last game was much more sensible, and we were playing a long ways down the board so we could take advantage of the longer range guns of the tanks. And the narrow field from this perspective gives me much better options for mutually supporting each of my units. Just as a side note, I worked out a new way to take my initial board images, so if you prefer this, the old style, or this, the new style, let me know in the comments below. For the first time today, my bazooka team managed to dismount and actually fire a good shot upon the enemy before being blown up. Unfortunately, they missed, but they got the first order design the next turn, run forwards to shoot the side armour of this Hellcat, and took it out. And that was really their turning point in luck for today, because no sooner had they sneezed, they took another shot at the Stuart this time, blowing that up, and towards the end of this game, they even managed a long shot onto a half-track. 3 kills and over 300 points to their name in one game. Well done, what a comeback. Down the middle, my pair of these slowly advanced, and again, side by side, supporting each other and putting out 4 anti-tank gun shots a turn is just something that is very hard to face. They were shooting through any gap in the buildings here to fend off the enemy, and I really like this tactic with a pair of Lees. They faced off against 3 tanks this time, due to a gap in the building hiding most of the other vehicles. You'd think they would end up losing that fight, but it really turned into a pin war, with only 1 Sherman being taken out, and just a lot of failed order tests on both sides really towards the end. My opponent tried to squeeze an infantry squad right here next to the objective, but I bullied them mercilessly, shooting at them with both of my half-tracks, my heavy machine gun jeep, the light mortar, the machine gun teams, and the machine guns from the Lees, and the officer and the air observer with their rifles. Eventually, with 10 pins on a veteran squad, off they finally went, leaving the objective mine and a second victory.
Well, that sends us out on another very successful tournament using our version of Tank War rules, which I think are just loads of fun, but it's not very good. The tank rules in bolt action, same with version 2, same with version 3. It's not really a game designed for vehicles, generally speaking. It's more of an infantry game, so the tanks are, in terms of rules, not that great. But then on top of that, kind of when we play tank wars, it's kind of just compounded by focusing on having lots and lots of vehicles. That said, it's still fun. We had loads, especially that second game today, against my favourite opponent. Just some ridiculous types of games that we have. Everything charging forwards and getting stuck in on the road. We weren't even driving down the road, it just looked like we all died driving down the road, but we'd been coming in from the sides and dying there. Hilarious, absolutely hilarious.
But that just goes to show that you don't necessarily need to have a game that is good to have fun with it. It's more about the people you play with, and I am very lucky to have a very good group that is a lot of fun. So I will come back next week, or next month rather, for another one, and I hope that you guys at home have a group that you can play some game with yourself. But until then, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.